Hello everyone, this is session 3 of our 2-week unit on the arrival, and in this session we are going to be editing your final story. So hopefully you will have finished your piece from yesterday and we're going to see how we can improve it. So first of all, as always, we're going to just get our brains warmed up by answering some questions. So I want you to pause the video in a moment and have a little think about, so you can write down what is editing, why do we edit, what do we edit, and how do we edit. So if you pause now and write me down some answers. Okay, so editing, that is fixing, proofreading and fixing our basics, checking for errors, and obviously improving our work as well. We do it to obviously make it better, because once you've got all your ideas down and been in full flow, sometimes when you look back at it with fresh eyes, you either see your mistakes, because we don't always see them straight away, or then you have had time to think about how you could improve things. So what do we edit? As we've just talked about, we've got our basics, like spelling, punctuation, and obviously then we can improve it. And how do we do it? Probably the most important part is we do it in stages. So throughout this video, I'm going to be showing you what I want you to edit bit by bit. You're going to pause and have a little go, because remember, we don't just try and edit everything at once. We have our process. So first of all, as we always do, it's going to be editing our basics. Remember, we edit in a different colour so you can see what you have corrected. So if you've written in pen, you would edit in a grey pencil. If you've written in pencil, you could edit in a pen or whichever colour you've got. Try to make sure you use a sharp pencil or a pen to edit. So remember, there's no point editing and it being a little bit smudgy and then you're not going to be able to see actually what you've written. So first of all, we've got missing words or extra or repeated words. So at this point, I want you to skim read. That means you're not reading for content, you're not looking at spellings, you're literally just looking if you've got any missed out or extra or repeated words. So if you pause and do that for me, please. So next we are looking at punctuation. Now obviously the most important piece of punctuation are the full stops and capital letters. Obviously at year 5 and 6 we use a variety of punctuation at higher level, but we'll look at them in a moment. Well, first of all, just going to look at the basics. So full stops, these should come at the end of every idea. Often when you feel yourself take a breath as you read, there should be a full stop. Don't just put one in though, look carefully to see if it's the end of an idea. So you read your sentence and think, have you told the reader one idea? Now obviously if you use a conjunction like and, but or something like that, that can have two ideas in, because you've got a conjunction there and the full stop would come at the end. As you're doing that though, you're going to check that after every full stop that there is a capital letter after it. So again, you are just going to have a read through and check your full stops in the right place, and then you're going to scan for a full stop and then check there's a capital after it. Okay, so pause the video and off you go. So next is commas. These are probably the ones that people misuse the most often. And you have to remember that they should come after a fronted adverbial. So we'll think about that for a moment. So we've used a lot of adverbial, maybe phrases at the beginning for cohesion in this piece of writing. So if you've got something at the start, like it was stepping off the ship, comma, and then you carry on the sentence. Or if you've got like something like the next day, comma. We've also written here either side of an embedded clause. Now remember, a clause is a part of a sentence. An embedded clause is extra information in the middle of a sentence that you can take it out, the sentence would still make sense. It's just adding information, but there should be a comma at either side of it. And also make sure you haven't used a comma where there should be a full stop or a conjunction. So as we just said earlier, if it's two separate ideas, either it should be a full stop or a conjunction. Lots of times that's where people are just putting a comma and it doesn't make sense. So just have a little look for that. So if you pause and you look at your commas next, please. Okay, so number 4 is articles, a and an. Now remember, use an a or an a if the noun starts with a consonant, and an if it starts with a vowel. So if your word begins with a, e, I, o, u, then the article in front of it should be an. If not, it's a consonant and it should be a. You pause the video now and have a little look there. Again, you can just scan through to find the at and the an and check the next word after it. Okay, the next thing I'd like you to do is you are looking at your paragraphs. So we know that for paragraphs, we group ideas, and you can change paragraphs in a fiction piece of writing if the time's changed, or particularly with speech. Don't worry too much about speech at the moment, because we're going to look at that on the next slide. If the place has changed, or the time, or maybe the person is in the new speaker. So if you have a read through and realise you've not started a new paragraph and you should, you can see my little symbols here, 2 lines. You can use that to show where a paragraph should be. So if you pause the video and have a go at that. Now the last bit of our basics is spellings. Now we know from when we edit in school, we read our own writing backwards, so you look at just the spellings, not the sense of the writing. So you underline any, with a pencil or a pen, whichever you're editing in, any words that you know are not correct, and then you come back and you correct them with a dictionary, or you might have an adult to help you, or with an adult to help you could always Google it. If you're Googling for spelling, make sure you write define or definition at the front, and that will usually take you to just a definition of that word. And please make sure when you're Googling, you do have an adult with you. And also, when we talk about sometimes with spellings, it's if the spelling looks incorrect to you, because you're all very good readers, you might not know how to spell a word, but you will recognise if it doesn't quite look right. So even if you're not sure, underline it and you can check it later. If you pause now and check your spellings. Okay, now that your basics are done, we are going to look at speech punctuation, because across this unit, that is what you've been looking at, and it is quite difficult to make sure speech is punctuated correctly, particularly when you're doing your writing, you're in full flow, sometimes a little basics slip. So I would like you to check in a moment that you use a capital letter at the start of speech. Each time a new person speaks, it goes on a new line. Inverted commas, which are what sometimes people call speech marks, but remember we call them inverted commas. At the start and the end of the words being spoken, and there's an example here of what they look like. So remember, it's not if it says said George, it wouldn't be after said George because that's not being spoken, it's the bit that the character said. Punctuation goes inside the inverted commas. So if you've got somebody shouted it and if you use an exclamation mark, that would go inside your inverted commas. And when speech is interrupted mid-sentence by a reporting clause, you reopen the direct speech in lowercase. So for example, don't climb the wall, shouted Mrs. Bloggs as she hung out the washing, because you might fall and hurt yourself. So this speech has been interrupted by the reporting clause, that's basically who said it, shouted Mrs. Bloggs as she hung out the washing. We've got a lowercase because her sentence is actually, don't climb on the wall because you might fall and hurt yourself. So it doesn't need, that because does not need a capital letter. And as you can see modelled here, we've got the inverted commas after the punctuation, just the bit that's being spoken. The comma, because that shows that the speech has been interrupted and it's not finished yet. We've got shouted Mrs. Bloggs, obviously proper noun Mrs. Bloggs is used capital to punctuate it. She hung out the washing because you might fall and hurt yourself, and again, that full stop is inside the inverted commas. Now, if somebody else spoke after this, remember we put them on a new line and we use the capital letter at the start of our speech. Now, if you'd like a little bit more on this or more examples, you can go back to the teaching video of that Mrs. Farrington did, and it was a part of your writing when you began, and there's some more examples there if you need a little bit extra help. But if not, if you have a look at this, pause your video and check that all your speech has been punctuated correctly. Okay, now we're looking at improving our work. So we've edited our basics and now we're looking at things that we've looked at throughout the week and seeing if we can have included them or we can improve them now. So one of the things you looked at was creating links between paragraphs. And we spoke about that yesterday as well, writing our ending. So what I'd like you to do is if you look at your work, you need to check the last sentence of each paragraph and check it links to the first sentence of the next paragraph. So for example, on one of the videos you watched previously, it talked about George being on the boat. That was the last sentence of a paragraph. Next one said stepping off the boat or stepping off the ship. So it linked that he was traveling on the ship and then he'd arrived, obviously coming off the ship. So if you check, just to remind yourself, the last sentence and first sentence are paragraphs to check that they link with each other. Okay, now, as well as that, we talked about cohesion within a paragraph, making sure it flows and you repeat ideas. Now, repeating the ideas that we looked at were things about the hope to see us family, excitement. The thing you have to just be careful not to repeat, though, is openers, so the words that you begin each sentence with. Now, when we are in class, you might remember that we do this by reading our whole piece of writing, or sorry, not reading it, scanning it and skimming it. You need to skim read, and every time you find this word at the beginning of your sentence, you write it down. And at the end, that means you can see if you've overused any words. So what you'll do is you'll read your work, you'll write down on a separate piece of paper the first word you've begun every sentence with, and then you'll see have you used a variety of openers. You might notice that 5 of your sentences, for example, start with the. So you need to start thinking about how you can improve And that also helps your writing flow. So it's not, repetition in some ways is good, but when it's just repeating the exact words, sometimes can be a little bit boring to read. So if you pause now and do that task for me, please. Okay, so next in our improving is we are going to make sure that we entertain the reader by weaving action, dialogue and emotions. Now you've edited your basics, you're going to read your writing from start to finish with obviously your bits edited. And you're going to think about, have you used enough dialogue? Have you used too much dialogue? Has it just turned into a continuous conversation rather than a story with actions and emotions in? Are there parts that you could maybe add a little bit in, or could you actually improve the dialogue? Think back to those reporting clauses that we just looked at then. Instead of saying said or shouted, is there another way the character could have spoken that's a little bit more interesting? So remember, when you're looking for swapping words out, you can use a thesaurus for that, looking for synonyms, which are words that have the same meaning, but obviously a variety of words. Check about the feelings and emotions as well. That's always what grabs the reader in, because it helps them, we call it empathize with the character. They can kind of feel what they're feeling. So have a little look if there's any of those type of things you can do. So if you pause the video now and see if you can make any of those improvements. Remember, there's also swapping verbs, adverbs and adjectives. They are always nice, easy ways to engage the reader by adding more interesting words. Off you go. Okay, so now that you've fully edited and improved your work, I hope you're really pleased with it. Now, if you would like to, you can copy this up. So, you know, sometimes when we've done this, when you've edited it, obviously it can look a little bit messy and it's sometimes hard to get the full impacts of what you've written because of all the edited bits and you can't quite see. So if you would like to, you can use paper from one of the previous sessions. You can download it again, or just line paper, whatever you prefer to write on, or you could even type it up if that's what you prefer. You can copy up your final piece. Remember, that's what you're emailing to teachers and we're really looking forward to it. Now that's the end of lesson 3 for this week. And just a reminder, as it says on the website, lesson 4 and 5 are your comprehension tasks. So we've left them to the end of this week, so you were in full flow of your writing and now they're here. Because remember, usually we do a comprehension once a week. So we've got 2 for this week because last week we were still writing and we didn't want to break up the flow. Now your comprehension tasks are linked with your science, all about the heart. So I hope you enjoy reading them. There's some texts that are a little slightly different point of view than just scientific. Remember all your normal reading skills. They are listed on our website, all the tips for how we answer those questions, and the answers are there as well. Okay, and I will see you soon.